I think in the service business, what you try to do, and sometimes to a fault, is you try to provide as many services as you can in order to, please your client and continue to get, additional work down the road. And one thing that we've learned over the years is that, you can't be everything to everyone, and you have to stick with what you know and what you're good at. And what we've done over the years, the 25 years I've been here, is I've partnered with, people outside of my industry, although similar industries, that provide the services that some of our clients are looking for. So in a way, they're an extension of ABC, but they have the same mindset that we have. They do have the same service delivery that we have. So we have a nice comfort level if our client has a request that we can't handle, that they're able to jump in and support and help them.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Cultivate, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier.
Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. I'm thrilled to introduce you to today's guest. He's worked in the commercial moving industry for nearly 25 years, starting as a mover in high school and college, then working his way up through management, and is now the co-owner, along with his brother Nick, second generation. They prioritize customer service, quality, and safety. President of ABC Moving Services, Inc., Sam Graves Jr., welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you investing the time. Thanks for being here, man.
Excited.
And I wanted to share, with people listening, Sam, that the reason you and I decided to get together is you're not a facility manager or professional by your trade or by your role, yet you bring a lot of value to our audience and to that community. So I thought it'd be really good to talk through your process, what you do, how you do it with your clients, so that hopefully listeners can pick up some tips or questions that they should ask either you or another company like you. So that said, you've done quite a bit. I mean, you started moving in high school. Do you miss moving sofas and couches, or?
Sometimes.
Okay.
I'll jump in when I have to.
Gotcha. And you're not residential, but we'll get to that. So through all your experience and all these years of doing what you do, Sam, what's been your biggest lesson learned?
Sure. I think in the service business, what you try to do, and sometimes to a fault, is you try to provide as many services as you can in order to, please your client and continue to get, additional work down the road. And one thing that we've learned over the years is that, you can't be everything to everyone, and you have to stick with what you know and what you're good at. And what we've done over the years, in the 25 years I've been here, is I've partnered with, people outside of my industry, although similar industries, that provide the services that some of our clients are looking for. So in a way, they're an extension of ABC. But they have the same mindset that we have. They do have the same service delivery that we have. So we have a nice comfort level if our client has a request that we can't handle, that they're able to jump in and support and help them.
I would imagine that's appreciated, making it
It
easy
is.
for people. Yeah.
And they like having me in these situations because I do serve as the main point of contact. So it's not like I'm just dumping them off to someone and, here's their number, here's the email. I'm trying to bring that relationship together and then help them coordinate that piece, however it factors into the project.
Mm-hmm. Do you have the same, I'll call them trade partners or other partners that you refer in when a request is made? Is it always the same group?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then, how does that process work? Can you give us an example of when this actually occurred, to try to, really land an example here of this is what the request was and this was the solution?
Sure. We had a very large lab move. It was actually this time last year. and we were dealing in a building that had a very small freight elevator, and they had very expensive, they're called robots, and they have to be handled a certain way. They're not supposed to be tipped on their ends, or they're supposed to, maintain, they're crated, and they're supposed to remain level, as they're being moved. So the freight elevator presented a challenge, with moving the pieces in that manner. So we brought our rigger on board, did several site visits of the origin site for where they were coming out. We determined what windows they were going to be coming out. They set up the crane. They communicated with building management because streets had to be shut off. They got the details in place. We worked with the vendor who was creating the machine, and basically just, set the plan and then carried out the plan.
Hmm.
And it went picture perfect.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. That's great. And I'm sure the client appreciated that because it made the process a lot easier for them, right? They didn't have to go vet another company. You had already done that for them.
Exactly. They were,
Mhm.
again, kind of an extension of ABC. We brought them in. I don't know if under our umbrella is the right term, but they were working, through me for the client. And so for all the site visits with the rigger, it wasn't just the rigger and the client, it was ABC, the rigger and the client, just making sure we've got, everything covered. And what's that saying? All our I's dotted and T's crossed.
I think it is.
What made it even more challenging was this time of year with the weather.
Mm.
Um,
Oh,
you
so it
know,
was
so coming
icy.
off of, it was like the eighth or ninth floor. And so you have to be careful with the wind and all the other elements. So it was kind of touch and go, but it worked.
Congrats.
Thank you.
You had mentioned another, I don't remember the wording you used, but we talked previously about another, I don't know if it was lesson learned or something that you had shared with me. I think it's worth discussing.
Sure. The other thing that we the way we try to operate, with the client is if you can't do something, just be honest and say you can't do it. A lot of times, we're waiting for new opportunities, and sometimes they come during periods where you can't, support them as you normally would or normally could, and you end up trying to force something, forcing a situation that, is probably not going to work out well. And so sometimes in our industry, if you have a crew out in the field and it needs to be, an eight person crew, 10-person crew, 12-person crew, and then you have another job that comes into place, you start peeling back from that crew in order to fulfill the needs of this new opportunity. And it never works out well. So we had a situation, or I personally did, it was around like 2011, 2012, and we had been calling on this client for a long time just to try to earn their business. And he called me with an opportunity for a particular weekend. And it just so happened that that weekend we were moving a very large firm around the clock. And the reason I remember it because it was St. Patty's Day weekend. Um, but we started Friday night and literally went around the clock with this firm until Sunday night. And I knew there was no way that we were going to be able to support him. So I called him and I just said, I'm so sorry, but we're not available this weekend. This is what's going on. He has since retired from this firm. But he respected me. He said, I respect the hell out of you for being honest with me. And I promise you there's going to be an opportunity for you down the road. And a couple months later, he called, gave us our first opportunity, and we've been doing all their work ever since then.
Oh, I
So
love that
honesty
story.
pays off.
I love that story. That is, you know what I'm thinking of too, Sam, is like people say that you can't teach experience. That was an experience that you went through, and look what was gained or learned from it. Right?
It
And
was
not
hard
to
because,
mention trust, I would think.
yeah, it's hard because as a young, back at that time, I was a salesperson and you're trying to, grow your book. I think that's how the saying goes. And this
Hmm.
was a great opportunity. And I've been trying and trying and trying. Um, but it wasn't the right thing to do. And, you know, being honest was the right thing to do. And it all worked out.
Well done. It's
Thank you.
fantastic. So in your industry, again, and we have mainly facility professionals who tune into the show.
Hmm.
That could mean anyone from, a law firm to insurance to biotech, and I think I may have listed a few places that you do a lot of business, right? But what are the biggest challenges you're seeing? And the reason I ask this question is, if people are listening, like, okay, there's a challenge, and what was the solution, right? How
Sure.
was it actually solved for that client, whoever the client might have been?
Okay. I think for us, it's two-part. It's technology, in the way that we used to communicate before technology and then how we communicate now. Um, and I don't know, Jay, there used to be kind of a cutoff in the day. You'd go home and then you'd come into work the next day, and now we get emails and text messages after hours, and oftentimes they're affecting the following day or some period later on in the month. Um, and you try to make sure that you don't like miss anything. I guess that's especially if it's an after hours email or communication.
Sure, you're always
Um,
on kind of deal.
you're always
Hmm.
on.
Hmm.
And it used to be a customer would call and see if you were available. Now it's, hey, I need this on this day. And you hope that you have that availability in the schedule. And sometimes you don't, and sometimes the customer understands, especially if they've been with us, for a while. Um, but along with the technology, and I think this kind of plays into COVID and how we're all kind of coming back to the office is um, the folks that work remotely, but still have facilities to manage or projects to manage. And ABC is really big on completing job site visits and reviewing the work that has to happen, because we want to show up with the right number of guys, the correct amount of equipment and trucking. We want to try to make sure we've timed this job appropriately, because a lot of we're not 24/7, but we're day and we're night and we're weekend, and assignments during the day can go into assignments in the afternoon or in the evening. And if things aren't timed correctly, it can really disrupt our schedule. So there are a lot of clients, I shouldn't say a lot, there are a fair amount of clients that I will go do a site visit on their behalf.
Mm.
I know their facilities well enough. I have the access cards. If I have any questions, there's been many a time where I FaceTimed them.
Mm.
But our biggest thing is wanting to, be able to go see the job so that we're as prepared as possible, and avoid any surprises.
I have several questions about this. So, like jumping back to technology, like you're always on. So, how do you may have started to or answered it, but if you could elaborate more on, there's really no off button, right? So, how do you satisfy that need or that request that's coming when you're not able to act on it in time?
I have through my laptop, I have access to our schedule from pretty much anywhere that I sit, except the golf course. So I'm able to access my laptop and check the schedule and get back to the client, pretty quickly. If it's a situation where they're looking for something on a busy day and I think we might be able to do it, and I go honestly to my brother. I make a phone call. He knows the schedule inside and out, and he gives me kind of the final yes or no as to whether we can move forward or not. And
Got
it
it.
doesn't happen too often, but it's happening more and more often.
We pivot and we adapt, right?
Yes, that's
Right,
it.
Sam? All right. I've never asked you this question before, so I have to ask, what's it like working with your brother? Like you're working with
Fantastic.
family every day.
It's fantastic. I couldn't do what I do, and I think he'd say the same thing. We've got a very good partnership. There's certain aspects of the business that I manage, there's certain aspects that he manages, and then for the rest, we come together. So
That's
yeah,
that's
I will say the
wonderful.
only downside is that we cannot take family vacations together. That's the only downside.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So do you talk shop and moving on holidays, on Thanksgiving and whatnot?
Yes.
So you're really always on.
Yeah.
That's so good to hear that, family working together and it's such a good synergy. Good for you.
Thank
Congratulations
you.
for that.
Thank you.
Um, you mentioned site visits, and this is something that, well, in our business, we find critically important as well to assess an area before you either price it or plan it or execute it, right? Or all three, really. So how do you, like, you're going to do a site visit on their behalf? Is my question, right? Right. So you solved it through FaceTime. Then you're able to get enough input from them so that you can successfully execute it even when they're not there. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, so typically, their communication will come with an email. There'll be a floor plan that is sent, a highlighted floor plan. There could be room numbers, space numbers, there could be pictures. So I've gathered all that information, and now I'm going to site, and
Hmm.
I'm taking all that information and I'm looking at everything that I have. And if I have any questions, that's when the FaceTime call will come, or a text message or phone call.
Hmm.
But that's where we want to make sure that we're on the same page with, you've requested this, this is what I'm seeing. Okay, we're good to go.
Got it. Got it. And this may pigtail right to it, or it might be a different answer, but you've talked about there used to be an interview process with clients, or we talked about, I think that's what we talked about, right, Sam?
Yeah,
So
back in
you're
the day,
going,
Jay.
right. Yeah. You're going back, like we sit down across the table and plan this whole thing out.
Yep.
So that could you just walk us through, like maybe give us a storyline through that whole thing and how it's evolved and how you've solved for that not happening. So our audience can hear, okay, this is what they do and this is the best
Yeah.
practice.
I mean, back in the day, I remember you'd put on a suit and tie, and you were one of the three or four movers bidding on a project, and you'd be able to go in with your team and you'd be able to sell, to the client, your team, your experience, and your approach. And unfortunately, that very rarely happens now. I would say, if I had to count, maybe 3 to 5 times a year.
Hmm.
A lot of times, clients are reaching out to PM firms who have experiences with everyone, but they're putting out an RFP process, and then the project management firm is leveling the bids and then making the decision. And then in some of those cases, you do get a chance to interview, but not like it used to be. So what we try to do is, through our experience in the field and through some of the media that we have, is we try to put as much information we have relating to our experience in that RFP response, in hopes that it gets in front of the client. So in particular, like with lab moving, they can see our experience, when it comes to receiving, storing, and delivering new lab equipment. Or they can see some of the images or the videos that we have of our own moving equipment that we use to move lab equipment that's very similar to what they have. So everything that we would bring into a presentation if we were physically able to go in and do it. But since we can't, we've tried to make those changes in the RFP submittal process, to A, get them in front of the PM firm handling the project, and B, hoping that it gets in front of the client.
Do you find that's excellent, by the way? Do you find that that's so when you mentioned, let me back up, the bids, if you will, get leveled? Yes, we hear that too.
Hmm.
So this process is solving for the client the distinction really of you versus someone else, and the value, I guess they'll be able to visualize what you're actually bringing.
So that's a tough question. I have to be careful how I answer this. Um,
Next,
the,
pass. You want to pass?
moving on. I guess, I guess not to jump ahead or jump out of turn, but I think I feel, and I could be wrong, but I feel that, the common misconception about, moving companies is that everyone is the same. Let's go to the hourly rate and choose the cheapest one on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we constantly, I don't know if fight against is the right word, but that's what our constant battle is. So, when these bids are leveled, all the hourly rates are, side by side, and all the pricing is side by side. And you hope that the rest of the stuff that you've included in your RFP response, it could be, past projects that are very similar to this one. It could be the resume of your project management team and the experience they have on some of these client sites. You hope that that's all included in the leveling process, not just Excel spreadsheets with mover A, B, and C,
Mm-hmm.
hourly rate, total charges, moving on.
Got it.
No pun intended.
No, I got you. I think you gave away, like, out of sequence. Well, first, there's no rules here, right? And
Okay.
yep, we talked ahead of the pod. We did. So, um,
And I will say, over the years, we've developed some very a strong relationships with the PM firms. Where we're coming in is not, I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying this, but years ago it kind of used to be, here's the client, here's the vendor, here's the PM firm, and there was kind of like this wall that was put up,
Hmm.
and you couldn't really communicate with the client. It had to go through the PM firm. That's how I felt. I could be wrong, but over the years we've established relationships with these people, and it's like, hey, we're teaming up with you to make this a successful project for the client. So lean on us for our expertise so that we can have a positive outcome with this project and everyone looks good.
Hey, rock stars. If you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Colutis, is your go-to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top-notch quality. From project planning to execution, Colutis is there to make hard work easy. Visit colutis.com today to get started. Let's pick on biotech for a minute because
Yeah.
I know you do a fair amount in that space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we'd both agree, and probably everyone listening would agree, that there's some sensitive equipment, materials, processes, everything associated with that world. So how can you give us a couple of examples, Sam, of like, what should a biotech be looking for in a moving company? And what are the risks that are taken if certain things aren't either asked or considered?
Um, there's a lot to consider in the biotech world. And I would say that the biotech space probably makes up 60 to 65% of our total business. And I think a lot of it has to do with our location. Our main terminal is in Somerville, so, servicing Cambridge and Watertown and Seaport, logistically makes sense for, a lot of the firms. But the lab space is different because of the value that's in the lab. And it's not just the science that they're working on, it's the physical equipment that they've purchased to perform the science.
Mm-hmm.
So having a trusted partner that can come in and know that you can't handle or move certain pieces of equipment before it's been serviced. Because you could, ruin the piece, or I'm sorry. Yeah, you could ruin the piece, you could void the warranty. All sorts of things could happen, in that scenario, or working with EH&S to make sure everything is, cleaned and ready for us to move.
I like what you said about the value in the lab, and it's not just the science that they're working on. That's very true.
Yeah. So going into the lab setting, when we're completing our site visits, we're taking note of everything that they have. We as a company have invested in expensive moving equipment to handle the lab equipment so that everything gets handled safely. You avoid injuries. There's no damage when it's delivered to the new site. So that's part of the site visit, is going in and calculating what we need in order to move them efficiently and safely and get them back up and running again. So there's not a piece of lab equipment that we haven't moved, and that we, as we're walking through the lab, identify, okay, that needs serviced by a vendor, that needs serviced by a vendor, that needs to be created before we touch it. So there's a lot of things to consider as you're walking through the space, because if you don't call these things out and you don't address them and something happens, it's not going to end well.
Mm-hmm. Are there other industries that you'd like to showcase here, like other examples? Because I think this is really valuable, right?
Sure. I mean, we do a lot of the big law firms in Boston, the insurance companies in Boston, or I should say Greater Boston, a lot of work in the medical area, and then a lot of work for, the major universities in the city. It could be a lab move for a particular university. It could be a dorm move for another university. It could be a staff move for another university. Um, so there's a lot of ground that we cover.
So let's take the universities for an example. I like that. So if they were to ask you, the top two, top three, top question, whatever you want to pick there, Sam, what should they be asking either the PM firm that you're working with or the moving firm directly, you, before they engage with you on a move at a university?
They should know, what type of experience we've had,
Mhm.
the settings that we've worked in. We're always wanting to provide, references for people to call on and reach out to. But universities, well, each university is different. But you're going to want to have a company that comes in and starts to understand like the inner workings of the university and how they work and all the parties that are involved and how the communication works. And, working in a lab at one university, their EH&S department may operate differently than another university. So the sooner you can get in there, start meeting all the team members to understand what's going to be required of us as a mover, for this project, the better set up we are to carry out the project.
What I'm hearing is everything's really backing upstream here to the site review. Site
Yeah.
review, site review, site review. Get there, figure out logistics, all the parties involved. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
And it's funny for some of these huge projects, we're in the middle of one right now that we had looked at back in like October, November. We're doing the move now, January, February. I think it's a 6 phase move. But even though we already looked at the move and looked at all the phases, before we even do phase one, we're back on site revisiting it to see if anything changes or
Mm.
has changed. And then
Mhm.
we've done the same thing for phase two and phase three. So it's not just that one initial site visit. It's subsequent visits just to make sure that all our ducks in a row, prior to us getting there.
Who are the critical people on your behalf, and then the critical people, and you've listed a couple already on their behalf, the client. Who should be in the site review to make it successful? Let's start with the
I
client, I guess.
The client, you're going to want a key contact from the firm or someone that can speak on behalf of the firm. A lot of the PM firms too that we work with, they'll have one or two representatives. They're all kind of hearing the same thing. Then if it's in a lab setting, you're going to want, the head of lab ops or the scientist, whoever's managing that lab. And then on our end, it's myself, or it could be one of our other, project managers. And typically on our end, if our schedule allows, it's going to be me plus one, or it could be our director of project management, Bill Murphy, and another one of our PMs.
Okay.
Getting kind of four eyes there to look at
Yeah,
the job,
sure.
but just to make sure nothing's missed and that we've
Hmm.
accounted for everything. I think one of the difficult things of our industry, Jay, is that we, when we go and carry out a project, we're not just specifically working on that project. We've got a ton of other projects going on, small, medium, and large. So I could go do a site visit, make all these notes, and as I'm walking out, get a call about a completely different project. And maybe I didn't completely finish writing my notes down because I've now moved on to this conversation. So having another person there as a support, so you can come back in the office and sit down and make sure that you've covered everything. You're just
Hmm.
kind of double checking yourselves and making sure that you've covered everything and you're not missing
Yep.
anything. The same thing when sitting down and writing a proposal. I'm sure you go through the same thing, and you're writing away, and then you'll get a text message about something else, and then you'll get a phone call, and then you get an email, and then maybe you'll go get a coffee, and then you're coming back to that proposal. You could miss something.
Hmm.
So we
Very
try to
real.
create a lot of redundancies in the office, to prevent that.
Excellent. And yes, there are multiple distractions in our days. Then you've got me calling you about a podcast. You're like, come on, man. I have a proposal to write. I have a site visit to do. What are
Yeah.
you talking about? Um, Sam, we've been talking about solving challenges for your clients, right? For our clients. And I believe you gave an example of someone, I think it was downtown Boston, that they had a real challenge, right? Could you walk us through what that was and how it all played out and how you solved it?
So they had a large lab, or they have one coming up that they have to move. And she's worked with us long enough to know what we can do and when we need to bring a rigger on board. So she reached out to me. I said, sure, we'll bring our rigger. And we went out there and had a meeting. And part of what they had to move were these two very large magnets, um, that were probably older than you and I, if I had to guess. They're like dinosaurs. But they're enormous. And the concern, they're on a ground floor in one building going into another building that they either going to go up an elevator or in through a window. And there's no clear weight listed on the magnets. So the capacity in the building they're going into is a 5,000 pound capacity for the elevator, or it has to go into the window. So we're trying to figure out, all these scenarios. Because when it comes to the rigging and dealing with that type of weight, you cannot be guessing on what you think it may or may not weigh. So we left the meeting, and the rigging company that we used was going to put together two scenarios of pricing for them. One in the elevator, one through the window. But we still didn't know how we were going to get the weight. The lab was going to reach out to the manufacturer if they could even dig it up. So I called her on the way home that night, and I said, "Hey, how can I help you to figure out this weight? Because I don't, I want to, we need to get it to make sure the job is done safely.
Hmm.
But this is it's going to be kind of a hassle to figure this out." So we came up with a plan, and we figured out that we're going to get a pallet jack that registers the weight of the piece. And it's a 5,000 pound capacity. We're going to go out to the site. We're going to put it under the piece. When we raise it, if it registers at 4,800, we know we're good. It can go into the elevator. If it can't, if it says error, we know it's heavier than 5. And that's good information for the rigger to have. So now we can go through the window. I apologize. I know that was a little long-winded, but
No, it's
I guess
excellent.
that's the kind of what we try to do for the client, is not kind of say, "Hey, figure out the weight and let us know, and then we'll plug in whatever scenario, we discuss." It's how can we help you,
Mhm.
um, you know, with that task.
I see that as actual value delivery, not just service delivery, right? You weren't just going to make the move. That's experience right there, right? That's what they're buying with you.
I
The
appreciate that.
experience and the due diligence that you're putting forth in the process. That's great, Sam.
Thank you.
Um, what am I forget? I know we covered a bunch of stuff already. Is there anything in the moving process, or for that matter, any other industries we should showcase, Sam, like unique scenarios or things that have come up and problems solved? Anything else out there?
No, I mean, in the moving industry, on us, you're typically going to involve, an installation firm that's either going to be breaking down or setting up furniture. Oftentimes now, clients are moving into new office space, and per their lease requirements, they have to get rid of what remains at their current space. We have a liquidator that we work with,
Hmm.
to resell, repurpose, recycle, donate, whatever's left over.
I want
Um,
to pause you there for 1 second with a question. In right at the beginning of the show, we talked about trade partners or people that you bring
mhm.
in, right? Is that what that liquidator is, or are they
Yes.
part of your? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. The
okay.
liquidator's he's a partner. The installer's a partner. Another one, and it doesn't come up too often, but it's very valuable, especially when you're dealing in a more of an office setting downtown.
Hmm.
The relocation of artwork. And as you're walking through the space, I don't know the first thing about artwork. I know when something looks expensive. I know there's certain things we should or shouldn't handle. So we have a trusted art vendor. And there are a lot of times that I'll bid on the job, and they'll say, "Well, you're the only one that brought the art vendor in." I'm like, "Well, how much is the piece?"
Hmm. Hmm.
I'd rather, have it delivered there without, any damage or any puncture holes in it. And the thing of it is, in the case of the art vendor, for them to come and handle the piece, they're not any more expensive than we are. But the reason I like it is because that's what they do every day. That's what they're good at. And
Hmm.
and they know how to handle those materials. I've been in situations before, where we use a foam protection, um, as part of our moving equipment. It's like a buffer on the piece, different than a furniture pad. It's foam.
Okay.
And I've been in situations before where I thought we could take this piece of art and just put foam in between the pieces. And they said, no, the oils or whatever on the foam are going to interact with the oil on the piece of the art. So you have to
Wow.
use this type of material in order to protect it and then transport it. So that's why I like having those people, because that's what they do for a living.
Mhm.
And that's what's best for the client.
Something I personally would never have thought of. And again, your experience, right? Your experience and expertise in executing these types of jobs.
Yeah, and
Like
I
that's
think it gets back to, what we had said earlier is, you can't be everything to everyone and
Mhm.
stick with what you know and what you're good at. But over the years, we've found these people to support us.
That's
Um,
great.
so
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for
you're
sharing that.
welcome.
All right, we've learned a ton from you. We've quite a lot actually. Process solutions, art specialty people. Like, I didn't think we were going to go there, right? That's why we're talking.
Yeah.
But all right, so now we want to learn a little bit more about you. Like, what does Sam do when he's not answering an RFP at 10 o'clock at night from his laptop, or doing a site visit, or talking to an art specialist? What do you do for fun, or what would you want to share?
My family's everything to me. I have 4 kids. I've got 3 daughters and a son. My oldest is 22, then 19, 17, and then little Sam, the third, is 13. And they're everything to me. So I'm fortunate enough where my oldest goes to college in Boston. The second oldest is up in New Hampshire. So they've stayed close to home, while in school. And so we try to get together, as often as we can. And they're really big into sports, so we try to go and watch them and support them. And other than that, I love to golf. It's a kind of a stress reliever for me. And my son loves to golf, so we try to get out there as often as we can together.
Oh, that's nice. Any favorite course?
No, we try to keep it simple. I don't really have a favorite. Um, just more or less just kind of working on my game that doesn't want to seem to improve. But then just trying to enjoy the company, that you're with. Oh,
Sure. That's great, man. Thank you so much for sharing that.
thank you.
I do want to give you an opportunity to just, if there's anything about ABC Moving Services that you'd want to share, I mean, now would definitely be the time. Please, is there you've been in business for quite a while, your second generation ownership. Yeah, anything you'd like to say about ABC that we haven't covered?
Our father founded the business in 1982, and my brother and I acquired it in 2018. And it's a fantastic place of business. And I'm not just saying that because I'm the owner, but we've got a great group of not only people here, but the crews in the field. Um, just good, professional, hardworking people and people honestly outside of work, that we'll get together with and, maybe golf or go have a beer, if I can say that. Um,
You can say whatever you want, man. No rules.
so it's not just strictly come to work and go home. So there are relationships outside of work and yeah, it's hard. It's a small, family owned business. It's not a huge corporation.
Mhm.
Um, but it's enjoyable to come into work every day and work with the people that we have here.
That's everything. That's
Yeah,
everything. Yeah, and the outside of the work stuff is just a great bonus, isn't it?
it really is.
Yeah,
It really
I agree
is.
with you. So if someone wanted to get in touch with you personally, or wanted to get in touch with ABC for services or just questions, like maybe they have more questions that weren't already answered in this podcast, how would they do so? How would they get in touch with you, Sam?
They could go on the website. I don't know if my email address is on there, but I'd be more than happy to give, my email address or my cell phone number.
Yeah, you
I do
can
my
say it
best
right
to.
now, and we can put it in the script if you want,
Sure.
the notes.
My email is sam.gravesjr at abcmoving.biz, B-I-Z. And my cell phone number is 617-694-0692.
Excellent. And are you on LinkedIn? I believe you are, right?
I
Because
am.
I
Yep.
think we met on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I'll tell you, man, I cannot thank you enough,
Thank
Sam,
you.
for being on the show, taking your time, investing. I mean, and you're a fun guest because every
Oh, I
lead up discussion
appreciate
we've
that.
had has been awesome, right? We're enjoyable. So maybe you'd even consider coming back.
Absolutely. And I can't thank you enough for this opportunity.
Of
And
course.
it's been awesome to see it grow. And I love watching the interviews as they pop up. So
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Sam. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone listening in the audience. If you heard something you learned or that you liked, or if you laughed, tell someone else about the show. Would love to have them join us. And it's been another excellent episode of Facility Rockstars. We will catch everybody next time.
It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colutus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.